Good morning and a very warm welcome to everyone attending the EPC Election Monitor event dedicated to the analysis of the Slovak elections held this Saturday. The results, as many of you might already seen, indicate rather significant shifts in the domestic political landscape. The left-wing social democratic populist and pro-Russian party, Smer, led by Roberto Fico, emerged victorious, securing 23% of the votes, which translates to 42 seats. Yet the party has not achieved a majority. The main contender to Fico, the Liberal Progressive Slovakia party, led by the European Parliament Vice Chair Michal, secured the second spot with 32 seats. This is contrary to recent polls, which had predicted his victory. In the third place, we have the moderate left-wing party, Hlas, which in Slovakian means voice, led by former high-ranking Smer member and ex-prime minister Peter Pellegrini. It gained around 15% of the votes and could potentially play a kingmaker role. On the other hand, the previous election winners, the conservative Orlano party, an acronym for the movement Ordinary People and Independent Personalities, which had formed a coalition with other conservative entities, only managed to secure 16 seats, a drop of 49 from the 2020 election results. The Freedom and Solidarity Party, known for its liberal stances, concluded with 11 seats, while the KDA, the Christian Democratic Movement, gained 10 seats. A surprising development, although, was the failure of the far-right Republika Party, previously seen as a potential partner for Smer, to surpass the 5% threshold required for the parliamentary representation. However, the Slovak National SNS party, known for its anti-migration stance similar to Fico, managed to secure around 6%. Given that 7 political parties have reached the 5% threshold to enter the parliament, we can expect that the coalition negotiations will involve multiple stakeholders and the process might not be that straightforward. The implications of these election results extend beyond Slovakia's borders. Although Fico might face challenges in establishing a stable coalition, his victory is already ringing alarm bells, especially in Brussels and Washington. The concern arises from the possibility of a more friendly Russian voice joining the EU, potentially weakening the EU's unity on its support for Ukraine. How to interpret these election results against the new geopolitical context that we face? How will the election outcome influences Slovakia's domestic and international foreign policies? And what does it mean for Europe? These are the main questions that I have the pleasure to discuss with our distinguished speakers, and allow me to present and introduce them today. Michal Vašečka, Program Director at the Bratislava Policy Institute. Thank you very much, dear Michal, for joining us today.
Thank you for the invitation.
Radovan Geist, publisher of EURACTIV Slovakia. Thank you so much, Radovan, for your time.
Thank you. Hello.
And last but definitely not the least, Xenia Makarova, Deputy Head of Stop Corruption Foundation. Dear Xenia, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for invitation. Good morning.
As always, our audience has the opportunity to submit the written questions using the Q&A box. Please use the Q&A box and not the chat box. And please send also your inquiries throughout the event, and I will try to make sure that they reach our speakers. And while there might be also an opportunity for live interventions from our EPC audience for your questions, however, given the tight schedule that we have, because the event will last for 1 hour, I might request that you submit your questions also in written form. Dear speakers, first I will ask each of you the general statement to assess your reading and interpretation of the election results, and then I will of course follow up with I will proceed with the follow-up questions. So let's begin. Dear Michal, what is your reading of the elections? Have you expected these results that we have learned yesterday and today?
Thank you for the question. I must say I expected exactly these results. Many were dreaming rather than hoping about potential victory of progressive Slovakia and others, other democratic political parties, I expected that Mr. Fico would win, but I was hoping that he will not get a constitutional majority. So in this respect, I'm not welcoming particularly results of these elections, but at the same time, Mr. Fico, who will most likely create the government, will have relevant opposition in a government, in a parliament, and therefore he might be controlled at least to a certain extent. There are many readings of these, interpretations of these elections. Of course, we can start from what happened, how that happened. In my understanding, disinformation and various hoaxes about the reality in Slovakia completely overwhelmed the space and influenced the results of the elections. Most of people are desperate about the situation of Slovakia. They believe that economically Slovakia is getting worse and worse. They are deeply unsatisfied with their lives, and the reality is not as gloomy as that. So in other words, perception of reality in this respect is more important than reality itself. And Mr. Fico, who was pouring oil into the fire during last 3 years, was just benefiting from it. But since we are going to talk about geopolitical situation, I believe that we have a good news and bad news. Firstly, good news, Mr. Fico will be not the one who will be pulling out Slovakia from the European Union or NATO. And on top of it, he will be not the most spectacular troublemaker in the European game. I would be far from assessing the situation this way. The bad news is that he might join Viktor Orbán in destroying the European consensus about European position concerning vis-a-vis war in Ukraine. Slovakia might be not very enthusiastic about supporting sanctions against Russia, etc., etc. We can speak also about common positions with Hungary and even Poland eventually after elections against some other policies in common European arena, such as a green economy and many other things. But generally speaking, these elections cannot be evaluated as absolute disaster as far as geopolitics in Central Europe is concerned.
Thank you so much for these insights. Indeed, we will also come back during the discussion the impact and potential impact of these election results when it comes to the EU's unity and its support for Ukraine, but in general also when it comes to the internal decision-making process in terms of the qualified majority voting, the EU reform, and so on. But before going into details, I would like to ask dear Radovan, what is your reading of the elections, and also perhaps you could also discuss the role of the political parties in disinformation and also supporting the polarization in the country, if you have observed any such trends. Dear Radovan, I think we can't hear you.
Radovan is kind of frozen, I believe.
Yes, I think we are experiencing a small technical problem. He's joining again. But before, dear Xenia, I would like to then turn to you and ask for your input and general assessment of the election results of Slovakia. And Radovan, we will come back to you.
Okay, so thank you for attention. I will connect the results with our main focus. It's anti-corruption fight against corruption. And from this perspective, I see two main reasons why the results are like this in Slovakia, because the parties Smer and Hlas were connected in past years very strongly with with business, and the previous elections in 2020 were very strongly connected with murder of our journalist Jan Kuciak and his fiancée Martina Kushnirova. So the previous results were very influenced by this their murder, and so these two now biggest parties or winners, or yes, were in last elections on lower positions because of this information of about connection with business. The second reason is that for some candidates, these elections were possibility how to protect against investigation, because we were about 20 candidates from or few candidates from the party Smer is under investigation. So if they're join the parliament, they have like something like protection in this for the reason. So this I see like a very strong motives for them before election, and how they lead their steps.
Thank you so much, dear Xenia, for this important.
If I can add, for the future of Slovakia, like I mentioned, the focus on anti-corruption and rule of law were not so strong in this election like 3 years before, and most of parties didn't strengthen these topics in their programs before election. So the bad news for Slovakia is that just from the 3 leading parties, just one, Progresívne Slovensko, has really some measures in their program for fight against corruption and rule of law. Smer and Hlas have nothing, or just very slightly measures to strengthen fight against corruption and rule of law in Slovakia. For example, now the Slovakia is in the index of corruption at 53 position from 100 states. So there were slightly increase during 3 years, but now I'm afraid that we will stagnate or maybe decrease a little bit.
Very important remarks there, Xenia. Thank you so much. And indeed, as you mentioned, if we also look back into the previous elections, so we remember that the main campaign message was indeed stop corruption, right? So that was the let's say the slogan that was so important. And then this time it's also important to learn your experience based on your very important work. What is the future of the reforms that have to be eradicate the corruption in Slovakia, which has so much problematic situation. But we will also come back to you on this outlook, so on the future outlook of the corruption-related reforms in Slovakia. But before, dear Radovan, please, thanks again that you are with us. I hope that the connection will not hamper us to learn your important reflections about the election results in Slovakia, and also perhaps it will be interesting to hear your opinion, since you are very much following also the online media, but also traditional media, to tell us whether you have observed how the mainstream political parties have advanced polarization and disinformation. If this has been the case, thank you, and the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, and I'm sorry for the internet connection. It's outside of my powers to do anything with that, so hopefully everything will work. Thank you for the invitation. I will actually echo what Michal said. So miracles happen, but I wouldn't bet on them. We basically all knew that Fico is going to win. I mean, there are a few polls that indicated that Progresívne Slovensko might be the winner of the elections, but then it was also difficult to imagine how they would, build up the government, and etc., etc. So we more or less have expected the result. There are some pleasant and unpleasant surprises. And just to add to what Michal said, I think one of the pleasant surprises is that Progresívne Slovensko, which was a party outside of the parliament, actually. I mean, they had one MP, which was previously an MP from another party, and so on. So they were not so much present in the media. Still, this party, which had a political campaign built on presenting their program, not on populist messages and so on, they won 17%, which is, I think, the best result of this kind of a party during the kind of modern Slovak history. So there is a silver lining to this cloud. Of course, as you've mentioned, disinformation and let's call it the hate speech or radicalized rhetorics, it has played a role at several levels. Actually, from 2020, Smer had joined those political forces which actually tried to use any and every crisis that Slovakia was facing, from pandemics to inflation to Russian aggression against Ukraine, to just increase their support and spreading disinformation or misinformation to voters and potential voters, and also using I would say kind of a hate rhetorics against anybody who they had identified as a potential scapegoat, potential enemy of the Slovak voters. So lately it has been, of course, Ukrainians and also LGBTI community. Besides Smer, which still considers itself a mainstream party, even though it's not a leftist party, it's not a social democratic party, it's more kind of nationalist populist party, but it still considers itself a mainstream party. It's part of the Socialists and Democrats and so on. So besides Smer, there are also other parties which use these rhetorics and divisive rhetorics, like Christian Democratic Movement. Their main message before elections was that we have to stop this progressive propaganda. We have to stop the propaganda that wants to enlarge of the people and so on. So in fact, a large part of the rhetorics of the political parties and campaign before the elections was not so much focus on stopping Smer and
Yeah, Radovan, unfortunately, I think that you are still experiencing some issues with the internet. Perhaps you can switch off your video if it's possible. Thank you. But I think that we have already heard the main point of your intervention. So it's great that you can still, but I hope that you will rejoin us with a better connection. Dear Michal, then let's also discuss the potential possibilities of the government formation, and we have the question from our audience: the likelihood to organize the government. For instance, the voice Pellegrini could break with Fico and join kind of a grand coalition. Is it possible that we can see this scenario, or is there any chances that we still have a possibility that progressive Slovakia succeeds or building the coalition? And perhaps if I also may add on that question, although from a different angle, since you're a very famous sociologist in Slovakia and in Europe, I would like to hear your opinion regarding the general social mood in Slovakia, why we have seen this result that we have seen. We also know some numbers from GovSec research that indicate that majority of the population, they are not necessarily in favor of supporting Ukraine with arms, and that there are several, let's say, challenges, right? And then people in general in Slovakia are rather friendly also from a traditional and historic purpose, memory. So please also expand on this, if I may ask, and then I will then continue with Xenia.
Thank you, Teona, also for kind words. But those are two questions. The first one is relatively easy. The second will be problematic, and we don't have so much time, so I will have to squeeze it really into a nutshell. Firstly, that's a very legitimate question, and I would even bet that such a question would come immediately. The person who is writing it is, and rightly so, considering victory of Fico as a disaster for democratic forces in Slovakia, which is true in a sense that Mr. Fico and his party is far from being, fan of open society. It's rather in the same way as people like Viktor Orbán, a fan of illiberal democracy, or if you want, even soft autocracy. So in this respect, I'm fully, on the, so to say, on the same page with the person who asked that question. The chances of creating very broad government of 4 political parties, it means Pellegrini's Hlas, Progressive Slovakia, SAS, Freedom and Solidarity, and Christian Democratic Movement, are not very high, honestly speaking. Firstly, because it will be Mr. Fico who will get today from President Zuzana Čaputová legitimacy to create the government. He will be asked to do that. And once he will be asked to do that, he will succeed. I'm almost sure that he will not. This is exactly what he was playing for. This was the most important result for him, to be the winner of elections, and he will make everything possible to make sure that Peter Pellegrini will agree to join a coalition. What will be the price? That's another question, and that might be another topic here. Why I believe that Mr. Pellegrini will not create a government with Progressive Slovakia and others, simply because we don't have a clear answer about loyalty of all members of parliament in respect of Hlas toward Pellegrini and Hlas. Let's not forget that most of, and actually all of those who are in parliament representing Hlas are former members of Smer. Mr. Fico knows them. They were part of this huge Smer happy family, and they might be either corrupted or convinced in various ways by Mr. Fico to leave Hlas in times when they would not create the government with Fico. It would be, it's a nice dream of most of Democrats in Slovakia to have such a broad, maybe inconsistent, but still pro-Western, pro-democratic, pro-transatlantic government. But I don't believe that will happen. Let's simply come to terms that for next 4 years it will be Mr. Fico who will be ruling the country. And the second question, and let's try to be brief. What happened with Slovakia? I will mention several facts. More than half of population, population is split into two parts, but it's 50-50. 50% of people are not remembering times after 1989 as something positive. On contrary, there are good memories on the communist system among 50 or even more than 50% of people. At the same time, roughly 50% of people do not evaluate our membership in the European Union as beneficial in all aspects. So there are some hesitations on the side of significant part of population in this respect. 36% of people would eventually vote in favor of leaving European Union in case the referendum about leaving from European Union is organized. Slovakia at the same time is, together with Bulgaria, the most pro-Russian country of the region, the most pro-Putin country of the region. It's the most anti-American country of the region. It's relatively anti-Western, speaking about Western values. It's the country with a very high level of distrust toward institutions and also toward other people, so both on vertical and horizontal levels. And it's the country which is, speaking about index of disinformation, ranking on the first place in the respect of being influenced by disinformation hoaxes. So this is a very broad and short picture of Slovakia. Generally speaking, you cannot really expect that pro-democratic, pro-European forces, and even forces such as Progressive Slovakia, Christian Democratic Movement, or SAS, who are representing Slovakia of 21st century, will be dramatically and overwhelmingly winning elections in Slovakia. Simply, even if they would make a campaign much, much better than they did, still the country would be deeply polarized into these two parts.
Thank you very much for this very interesting remarks, dear Michal. I would like now to also ask to Xenia her opinions and perspectives about the future anti-corruption reforms in the country under the new government, and perhaps also discuss what is the current state of play and how do you imagine the continuation of if there will be continuation of the high-profile investigations and prosecutions that we have seen in the previous period, and what's your projection in this respect. And before I give you the floor, dear Xenia, I would also like to reflect on the questions that we are receiving from the audience, namely the country's migration policy, whether it will change and to what extent it will change under Fico's government, and also more specific question related to EU Special Representative Miroslav Lashchak. Sorry, perhaps I'm not pronouncing that well. And the author of this question mentions that The Economist reports that Slovakia's election winner, Fico, might appoint him to his old job as Slovakia's foreign minister. If you have any reactions on that, and we will come back. Dear Xenia, the floor is yours.
Mr. Vašečka is laughing, so maybe he will better answer the question about Mr. Lajčák. But just my point of view, because I'm not a professional on the broad area, but there were questions to Mr. Lajčák and his position in EU and to foreign policy, and the difference between position and view on foreign policy in Smer. So they were in this line something like not partners or not in the same line, but at the end, he's still the member of the now winning party. So we will see. Mr. Vašečka maybe will complete the answer.
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, I can jump into it, but let me tell you, that would require inside information, and we don't have them. I can comment just on the fact that would be eventually a smart move on the side of Mr. Fico, because some people in Slovakia and even outside of Slovakia were afraid that people like Mr. Blaha, well-known member of Smer, who was securing, I would say, the position of Smer by spreading various hoaxes. The allegations were basically that in case people like Mr. Blaha would become important player in Slovak foreign policy, that would mean a complete disaster for Slovak foreign policy and even for European foreign policy. but that's very unlikely. I would say that was unlikely even before elections. So in this respect, that would be a very smart move to nominate somebody who has a very high, who has a position that proved to be very unproblematic and I would say accepted by all Slovak partners in the past. So that's all what we can say at the moment.
Thank you, dear Michal. And dear Xenia, I would like to indeed specify that the question addressed to you was mainly discussing the state of play of corruption in Slovakia and your perspectives, outlook of Slovakia when it comes to anti-corruption reforms, potential anti-corruption reforms, or continuation of such reforms under the new government, and if you think that the high-profile investigations will continue, and then we will come back to you on this after Radovan's intervention. Dear Radovan, you are with us. That's great. Again, I hope that this time it will also work. So my question, you have elaborated about the disinformation campaign and the role of also mainstream political parties in advancing not only disinformation but also polarization in the country. And I was wondering to what extent the West should be preoccupied and worried, and what the West have to do in order to support the measures to dissolve this kind of disinformation and misinformation. So, and to what extent the West has to be involved in such efforts. We also remember Vera Jourova's message that she argued that the campaign was marked by concerns over disinformation. So this is not news in this terms. So we know that this has been happening, and will be interesting to hear your opinions how to counter it.
Well, actually, yes, I think we should be concerned not only about Slovakia, but also other countries in the region. But there are also other countries in Europe which have this problem. I'm not sure that West, if you mean European institutions or other governments, could do anything with it directly. Of course, they could do it indirectly. They could be supporting independent quality media. They could be supporting civil society organizations that are actually kind of watching over issues like fight against corruption and the rule of law, etc., etc. So indirectly, they can try to support opposition towards any tendencies to build illiberal democracy, what Mr. Orban once called illiberal democracy, and what many in Slovakia, like Fico and also Danko, who is president of the Slovak National Party, potential coalition partner, as a nice alternative. So for me, I don't think that we are now back in 1994 when Slovakia had a second government run by Mečiar, and there was a real threat that Slovakia will turn into something like Madeleine Albright called it the black hole in Europe. Even though there is a threat that Slovakia will become another troublemaker, not as strong as Hungary, but still a troublemaker which would undermine the European unity. This will also depend on what is the real plan of Robert Fico. And I would pick up on what Michal Vašečka said. First of all, Fico has to think about next elections. And I'm talking now about presidential elections. The last thing he wants to do is to, again, mobilize opposition against any candidate that could be potentially connected to Smer and Robert Fico. So he would try to calm down the situation if he's thinking strategically, and try to get elected somebody who would be, well, maybe not a friend of Smer, but at least somebody who would, play on a peacemaker in a divided country, which also means that sometimes he would close one eye or both his eyes to misuse of power by Smer. So that's the first thing. Second thing, even if Fico builds the government, and I think I'm also on the side of those who think that he will be successful, he will not be in the Orban's position. So he cannot go full Orban. He will have Slovak National Party, which is a motley crew of people, populists, conspiration theorists, ultra-Orthodox Christians, very difficult configuration. It will be very, very difficult to rule with them. And then he will have Hlas, SD, which, well, again, it's a party, as Michal said, most of them were politically socialized in Smer, so they know how the Smer government works, and they also feel that Fico is a better guarantee for them than Pellegrini now, because he's a stronger leader. He can guarantee them economically and politically longer future. But at the same time, you might have some people in Hlas which are thinking about building like a, I wouldn't call it a pro-European or whatever, but let's say standard social democracy in Slovakia. And at one point, they might just back off from the government, and they might use the situation to build their own party, not necessarily with Pellegrini, but there are some other people there. We cannot say. So the government will be not so stable, and if Fico tries to follow in the Orban steps, first of all, he might split one of the parties in the government, and second, he might again polarize the opposition. So I don't think that, I mean, situation will be difficult, of course. Situation will be difficult because they will start to stop any anti-corruption measures enacted during the last 3 years. They will start to limit independence of the rule of law institutions, like the state attorney's office, and also, I guess, they'll try to repoliticize the police. But if we have sufficient support for well-functioning quality media and civil society, this could be some kind of a break on the on some of the anti-democratic illiberal tendencies of the future government.
Thank you very much, Radovan, for these comments. And let me directly ask Xenia, dear Xenia, do you share the comments of Radovan when he also mentions that we might expect the repoliticization of the police and halting certain reforms when it comes to the anti-corruption measures? So what is your reading of the situation from your professional background and from your practical work?
Yes, the first words of Mr. Fico after winning election were that he will replace actual president of police president and special prosecutor. So they are like symbols of actual or last very big and very strongly following investigation cases which are connected to top politics and top public officers. So I'm afraid of following this or the future of this investigation. Some are already at the card, so there is maybe not so much possibility to influence them. But I'm afraid of cases which are still under the investigation, because there may be some placed for influence them from the side of next government. The second point about which I want to strengthen is that not just these political cases were the main result of strengthening the rule of law during the 3 last years. There were also like putting or implemented whistleblower protecting office, which is doing very well, and there is big demand from the side of public for their job and for their work. So this will be not this couldn't be so much implemented in the future. And the second one is the judiciary reform, which were already started and implemented. And the bad news is that maybe it won't continue so fast as we expected, but it's already at the market, so I don't see there big moves in the future. But what am I afraid is the second one, the second area is area of watchdog. It's not just watchdog of NGOs, but also from the side of national authorities, watchdog authorities, because Mr. Fico describes a few times before the election that he maybe want to connect some of this control institution with which is not good news because they are working very well. For example, National Control Office or Office for Public Procurements are making very good job. They are controlling and stopping or putting sanction to big around big public procurement and big public money. So it won't be good news for this institution if there will be some changes around them, or even if they will be connected with another ones. And about NGOs, and there were, if you were traveling through Slovakia, especially in eastern part, a few weeks ago, you could see big billboards about that NGOs are, we will stop NGOs and so on. And few times ago, Mr. Fico was asked who is his big enemy, and he answered that NGOs. So I'm a little bit afraid of next steps in this area from the side of next government.
Thank you so much for this very interesting remarks. We will definitely also speak about the foreign policy and when it comes to Ukraine, but also we have questions related to the potential recognition of Kosovo, if there is a possibility under the new government. The first, let's say, quote that comes also into my mind was Fico's quote that people in Slovakia have bigger problems than Ukraine. And I was wondering to what extent you think that indeed the promise that he has given to the Slovakian electorate that he would halt the military support for Ukraine and also block countries' NATO ambitions. Do you think that this will come true and that he will keep that promise? And perhaps here I will also ask a question related to Kosovo. If you think that in case of Fico's government, there will be recognition of Kosovo. And please feel free to share your opinions on that. Perhaps we start with Michal.
Okay, I can start with a simple question. As far as Kosovo is concerned, no, Mr. Fico's government will not recognize Kosovo. It's as simple as that. I can imagine changes in the position of Slovakia with changes of the government in Slovakia. Slovak Democrats, let's say headed by Progressive Slovakia, might reconsider the original Slovak position, which is clear no. That clear no will continue under Fico. The first question about Slovak foreign policy, and I'm not expert on foreign policy, so I will leave it to Rado. But let me mention again, as I started at the beginning. Mr. Fico has been spreading anti-European messages around Slovakia, but at the same time now he will behave in a more pragmatic way, in the same way as Orbán is doing it in Hungary. You know, anti-European campaign is going on for years in Hungary, but Viktor Orbán, to a certain extent, is trying not to provoke Brussels on everyday basis. So this will be the same in Slovakia. Having said that, let's be clear here. Mr. Fico was never very much interested in foreign policy. In the past, he left foreign policy issues to his ministers of foreign affairs, and he basically gave them free choice what to do in most of issues. The same will continue now. But let me mention two objections. First of all, position speaking about Ukraine and war in Ukraine will not change dramatically. Slovakia will be still much more on the Russian side and will be also challenging the common position speaking about sanctions against the Russian Federation. Speaking about weapons coming from Slovakia to Ukraine, I would be more cynical here. they will be simply not going directly from Slovakia, but through the third party. Let's think about Serbia, which is also sending some weapons to Ukraine, but through third country. The same will happen here in Slovakia, and the reason is very simple. There are a lot of factories that are producing weapons, and Mr. Fico cannot allow the situation of rising unemployment or not to utilize all these opportunities that we have. So simply he will be as pragmatic as possible, but he eventually, and let me repeat it, might join Polish and Hungarian governments in their rejection of some other policies coming from Brussels. And there is a question about migration. In this respect, you can be absolutely sure that Mr. Fico's government will be not the one that will be supporting ideas coming from Brussels concerning migration. On contrary, he will be very much on the side of Viktor Orbán. This is readable already now.
Thank you, dear Michal, for your comments. And dear Radovan, please, the floor is yours. And that's great that Michal already also mentioned the remarks about the migration policy, but it will be also important to hear your opinions in that respect. Indeed, discuss with us how you see the country's future stances of migration. We know that Fico has rather strong stances on that, but also try to make it in a synergy with a wider foreign policy question when it comes to Slovakia's relationship with Ukraine, but also with the EU.
Thank you. I'll also start with an easy one. That's the migration policy. I don't think much will change, because if you look at Slovakia from 2015, most of the political parties and most of the politicians had very strict position on the migration policy, and were actually blocking any attempts at the European level to build a sustainable common migration policy that could sustain freedom of movement of people within the Schengen area. So this will not change. Of course, we can have some spectacular theater like Fico going to Hungarian borders, building fences there, sending there the army. But at the same time, he cannot do anything that would kind of antagonize Orbán, because he's his closest ally in the EU now. And he has to choose. If he wants to join illiberal forces, he has only two chances. One is Viktor Orbán. The other one is Kaczynski in Poland. With Kaczynski in Poland, it would be quite difficult to come into terms with his position on Ukraine. So it's Viktor Orbán. There is very little he can do in substance to change Slovakia's migration policy. I guess what might happen is that Slovakia will again change its position towards the latest common migration policy attempt at the European level. But again, it's not something completely new. There are also other political parties which has criticized the latest proposition by the European Commission. So that's one part. Regarding the European or generally European policy of the Smer government, we will have to wait and see for the formation of the government. So who are the allies of Robert Fico? We probably know that it's the HLAS and the Slovak National Party, and what they will ask from Robert Fico. On one side, we'll have strongly and openly pro-Russian conspiratorist, the Slovak National Party. On the other hand, he will have HLAS, which tries to behave as a social democracy now, actually. Half of the members, and I'm just now saying rough estimates, half of the members just want to get to politics because it's their way of living, and they don't care about the actual policies. The other half might have some positions and might be more or less pro-European, but that's not so important. They will go with the flow. They need to be part of the government, and if Fico offers security and a large part of the cake after forming the government, they will go with him. So he will be kind of torn, but mostly pulled to the side of kind of anti-European policies. And now what he will do, maybe he will try to play the game he played in 2016, and he actually played in 2006 when he formed government with first in 2006 with Slovak National Party and Mečiar's party, and he was trying to look like somebody who is actually guaranteeing pro-European or at least some kind of middle third way in Slovakia. And then in 2016 again he was in government with Slovak National Party, and he was actually saying that he is the one who is the barrier against the radicalization, political radicalization in Slovakia. So I guess he will, at the European level, this kind of anti-European stance will be more about the words than about the actual deeds. Last point on the Ukraine, it's, I think, well, openly Fico will of course say that we will stop supporting Ukraine the way we did under the last two governments. But at the same time, he will be selling ammunition to Ukrainians because it's just a good business, as Michal said. We are not going to send more weapons to Ukraine because we don't have them anyway. So on this, I mean, at this level, the previous government had done a wonderful job. They have helped with what we could help to Ukraine. Now it's more about the economic and let's say political support that we can give. At the political level, I don't think that Fico will actually, now try to wreck the whole, the whole European boat only because of the Ukraine. He's a pragmatist. He needs European money. He needs European money to govern at least in a more or less stable way. But at the same time, by joining the voices of those who are ready to sacrifice Ukraine for peace, he might actually encourage these forces also in other countries. And now we are not talking only about Central Europe. We can talk about alternative for Germany in Germany. We can talk about politicians in France, etc., etc. So actually, he might strengthen the camp, which is actually saying that, well, if Ukraine sacrifices Crimea and maybe some other areas, we can have again peace and cheap energy and economic development. He will not do it by himself, but he might strengthen this trend in the EU.
Thank you very much for these insightful comments. We have 7 minutes left, and I see that we still have 2 questions coming from the audience. I'm very happy that our audience is very active. But also one comment from my side that indeed the recording will be available, so our wider audience will also have the possibility to listen to the discussion. And the last question, and I would like that each of you also reflect in a brief manner to that. It's about the pattern of the West's engagement with Slovakia in light of these election results. So how do you think that the EU should engage with Slovakia in light of these results? So what should be the priorities? What should be the way of that constructive engagement? How do you see this relationship in the upcoming future? Let's start briefly. Let's say perhaps maximum 2 minutes each speaker. Michal, let's start with you.
I'll try to be brief. I see, what's the time. Very briefly, Mr. Fico might endanger the functioning of certain institutions of the rule of law in Slovakia. European Union, generally speaking, should be observing very closely what will be happening inside Slovak police, what will be happening in inspection of police, what will be happening in Slovak information agency, what will be happening with Constitutional Court, Supreme Court, General Prosecutor Office. These are key institutions of the functioning of rule of law in Slovakia, and we have certain experiences with Mr. Fico that he never closed them down, or he never tried to minimize their importance. He sterilized them. He sterilized them by putting his so-called people, in Slovak, naši ľudia, our people, into them, and he paralyzed their functioning. And this, in some of those institutions, the same story might happen again. So this is the only thing. Let's observe what will be happening with the institutions that are securing rule of law, and once they will be not functioning properly. Let's not be afraid to do what happened with Hungary, when Hungary simply was receiving a warning sign that in case you will continue with these slow but systematic destructions of rule of law, it will have also financial consequences for you. That's all.
Thank you. So you're in favor of the strong stance of the EU to support the rule of law and to make sure that it is not obstructed. Dear Xenia, very briefly, from your opinion.
I totally agree with Mr. Vašečka. I can just shortly add that maybe it's again the time for the EU institutions to very strictly follow the rule for putting EU funds for EU funding in Slovakia, especially maybe for agriculture and area of building infrastructure, where we have bad cases from the past about misused the EU funds. So that's for me. Thank you.
Excellent points. Thank you. And dear Radovan, what would be your then concluding remarks?
I'll just repeat what has been said. EU should stick to the principles. It shouldn't make concessions for the sake of whatever. I mean, Slovakia should fulfill all the criteria of the functioning rule of law institutions. Otherwise, money of the European taxpayers are endangered. You should not also fall for the Fico's games, like appointing somebody who is acceptable for a foreign minister. I mean, this is just the outside facade behind which he can try to rebuild the state in the illiberal fashion. And last but not least, remember, Fico needs European money. So if there is any kind of pressure that could be put on his government, it's the European money. And then there is a second one, and this is one of the questions. Yes, Social Democrats should be very careful what they do, because when they are cooperating with Fico, they are definitely losing any kind of, let's say, they are losing face for those who think that social democracy means fair, progressive, democratic Europe in Slovakia.
Thank you, Radovan, for these comments. And perhaps I will add regarding the last comment when you mentioned the Social Democrats. As you know, Smer Party is a member party of European family. And indeed, lately we are also hearing some comments whether the S&D group should also discuss the possibilities of perhaps not excluding but suspending its membership in case it does not respect the rule of law in this area. So it's very important comments and insights that we have listened. Thank you so much for your time and for your very insightful comments, and thank you also everyone who joined us today. I think that we had very interesting discussions, and from these discussions we can observe that these political developments in Slovakia not only are interesting such per se, not from the point of view of domestic development, but also they carry out wider implications for Central and Eastern Europe. And definitely at the EPC European Policy Center in Brussels, we will continue watching the developments around Slovakia, but also around the Central and Eastern Europe, and we will be organizing many other events to discuss the developments in this part of Europe. Again, a special thanks to all of you for joining us. To our audience, we deeply appreciate your active participation, and I wish everybody a very pleasant rest of the day. Thank you, and bye.
Thank you very much. And also thank you for interest in Slovakia.
Thank you.
Thank you. We will stay in touch. Bye.
Bye.